Jimmy Fallon opened an envelope. Ben Affleck heard the first sentence of the letter. And he had to walk off the stage because he recognized those words. The Tonight Show. Studios 6A at Rockefeller Center. April 2024. Another Wednesday night. Another celebrity interview. Another 300 people in the studio expecting laughs and movie clips and Jimmy Fallon's infectious energy. Ben Affleck was there to promote his latest film. He walked out to the usual fanfare. The audience cheering, the Roots playing, Jimmy standing to greet him with that trademark enthusiasm. They hugged. Ben settled into the orange guest chair. Everything was going according to script. They talked about the movie. About his kids. About Boston sports. The conversation flowed easily. Two guys who'd done this dance 100 times before, comfortable in the rhythm of late-night television. Then, about 12 minutes into the interview, Jimmy reached under his desk and pulled out a white envelope. "So Ben," Jimmy said, his voice carrying that playful tone that usually preceded a bit or a surprise. "We got something interesting in the mail this week addressed to you, care of The Tonight Show. And normally we don't do this, but the return address said it was important, so—" Ben's smile faltered slightly. Okay. What is it?" "I don't know yet. Do you mind if I open it?" Ben shrugged, still playing along, assuming this was part of some planned segment. "Sure, go ahead." Jimmy opened the envelope carefully, pulling out what appeared to be a handwritten letter on lined notebook paper. He unfolded it, glanced at the first line, and his playful expression shifted to something more uncertain. "Actually, Ben, this looks really personal. Maybe you should just read it," Ben interrupted, laughing slightly. "What's it say?" Jimmy hesitated, then began reading aloud. "Dear Ben, you don't know me, but you saved my son's life in 1997, and I've been trying to find you for 27 years to say." Ben Affleck stood up. Not the casual standing of someone stretching. Not a playful interruption. He rose abruptly from the guest chair, his hand immediately going to his face, covering his mouth. His eyes went wide, filling instantly with tears. Jimmy stopped mid-joke. The entire studio froze. The audience fell silent. The Roots stopped playing. Questlove's drumsticks hovered motionless above his kit. Jimmy sat behind his desk, still holding the letter, his mouth open, completely unsure what was happening. "Ben?" Jimmy's voice had lost all its performance quality, replaced by genuine concern. "Are you okay?" Ben didn't answer. He turned away from the desk, away from the cameras, and started walking toward the back of the stage. His shoulders were shaking. One hand still covered his mouth. The other had formed a fist at his side. The control room erupted into chaos. "What's happening? Did we lose audio? Is this part of the bit? Do we cut to commercial?" But Jimmy waved off the producers frantically signaling from offstage. He stood up from his desk, still holding the letter, and followed Ben. "Ben, talk to me. What's going on?" Ben reached the edge of the stage where the band sat and stopped, his back to the audience, his whole body trembling. When he finally turned around, tears were streaming down his face. Ben Affleck, Oscar-winning actor and director, crying openly on live television. "That letter," Ben said, his voice cracking. "I know what it's about. And Jimmy, I can't. I've never told anyone about this. Not even Jen. Not my kids. Nobody." The audience was completely silent. 300 strangers leaning forward, sensing they were witnessing something that transcended entertainment. Jimmy approached slowly, holding the letter like it might explode. "Do you want me to stop? We can cut to commercial, we can." "No," Ben said, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "No, if that letter found its way here after 27 years, then maybe it's supposed to happen. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened in December 1997. Ben Affleck wasn't always Ben Affleck, global movie star. In 1997, He was a 25-year-old actor who'd just finished filming Good Will Hunting with his best friend Matt Damon. The movie hadn't been released yet. Nobody knew if it would succeed. Ben was hopeful but terrified, living in a small apartment in Los Angeles, wondering if he just made the biggest mistake of his life turning down other roles to bet everything on a screenplay he and Matt had written. On December 18, 1997, Ben was driving home from a meeting with his agent. It was late, almost midnight. He was exhausted, stressed, replaying the conversation in his head. His agent had told him to prepare for the possibility that Good Will Hunting might not find an audience, that he should start thinking about backup plans. Ben was so lost in his thoughts that he almost didn't see the car on the side of the Pacific Coast Highway. Almost. It was pulled over on the shoulder, hazard lights blinking weakly. But something about it caught Ben's attention. The way it was positioned, slightly too far into the road, the passenger door hanging open. Ben slowed down. Every instinct told him to keep driving. It was late. This was LA. You didn't stop for strangers at midnight. But he stopped anyway. He pulled over behind the car and got out. As he approached, he could hear crying, a child's crying, desperate and terrified. Ben jogged to the passenger side and found a scene that would haunt him for the rest of his life. A woman, maybe 30 years old, slumped over the steering wheel, unconscious. In the back seat, a boy, maybe 7 or 8, was screaming and crying, trying to shake his mother awake. Ben's training from various action movies kicked in. He checked the woman's pulse, faint but present. He could see a medical alert bracelet on her wrist. Diabetic emergency. The boy was hysterical. "Mom! Mom, wake up! Please!" Ben opened the back door and crouched down to the boy's level. "Hey, buddy, I'm Ben. What's your name?" "Michael." The boy sobbed. "My mom, she's sick, she won't wake up, I don't know what to do." "Michael, listen to me. Your mom is going to be okay, but I need your help. Can you help me?" The boy nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Good. I need you to stay right here while I call for help. Can you do that?" This was 1997, before everyone had cell phones. Ben's car phone was a bulky thing that barely worked, but he ran back to his vehicle and dialed 911, giving their location on PCH, explaining the diabetic emergency. The operator said an ambulance was coming but would take at least 15 minutes. 15 minutes the woman might not have. Ben remembered something from a first aid course he'd taken for a movie role. Diabetics in crisis often needed sugar. He searched the woman's car and found a small emergency kit under the passenger seat with glucose tablets. Working carefully, with Michael watching from the back seat, Ben managed to get 2 tablets into the woman's mouth, positioning her so she wouldn't choke. 5 minutes later, the longest 5 minutes of Ben's life, the woman's eyes fluttered open. Confused, disoriented, but alive. The ambulance arrived. Paramedics took over. Ben gave a statement to the police officer who responded. The woman, her name was Sarah Mitchell, was loaded into the ambulance with Michael beside her. Before the ambulance doors closed, Sarah grabbed Ben's hand. "Thank you," she whispered, still weak. "You saved my life. You saved my son from, thank you. Just take care of yourself," Ben said. "And take care of that brave kid." He gave the police officer his contact information in case they needed follow-up, then drove home. He didn't tell anyone about it. It felt too private, too raw. And honestly, he was processing his own reaction, the terror he'd felt finding that woman unconscious, the desperate hope that he was doing the right thing with the glucose tablets, the sound of Michael's crying that had driven him to act. 2 weeks later, Good Will Hunting premiered. Ben's life changed overnight. Suddenly he was famous, doing press tours, getting offered major roles. The woman and her son from the highway became a memory he carried quietly, something that felt separate from his public life. He never heard from Sarah Mitchell again. He assumed she'd moved on with her life, recovered, and forgotten about the random actor who'd stopped to help. Until tonight. April 2024. when a letter addressed to him care of The Tonight Show arrived, and Jimmy Fallon started reading it on live television. Behind the scenes, Fallon made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. Ben was still standing near the Roots bandstand, tears on his face, trying to compose himself. Jimmy stood a few feet away, the letter in his hands, waiting. The studio audience hadn't moved. The cameras were still rolling. The producers had stopped signaling. Everyone understood that something bigger than television was happening. "Ben," Jimmy said gently, "do you want to tell people what this is about? Or do you want me to finish reading the letter?" Ben took a shaky breath. "I'll tell them. They deserve to know why I'm losing it on your show." He walked back to the interview area but didn't sit down. Instead, he stood beside Jimmy's desk, facing the audience directly. "In 1997, Ben began, his voice thick with emotion. Before Good Will Hunting came out, before anyone knew who I was driving home late one night, and I saw a car pulled over on PCH. There was a woman having a diabetic emergency, and her 8-year-old son in the back seat, terrified, not knowing what to do. The audience was riveted. Some were crying already, sensing where this was going. I stopped. I helped. I got her the glucose she needed and stayed until the ambulance came. I never told anyone because it felt like something that was just for me, you know? Something that reminded me that there's more to life than movies and fame and all this stuff." He gestured around the studio, his voice breaking. "And that letter Jimmy just started reading is from that woman's son, Michael, who I haven't heard from in 27 years. Jimmy looked down at the letter in his hands. "Ben, do you want to know what the rest of it says?" Ben wiped his eyes, nodded. Yeah, I do. But this is the moment no one in the studio, and no one watching at home, ever saw coming." Jimmy's voice was gentle as he continued reading. "Dear Ben, you don't know me, but you saved my son's life in 1997, and I've been trying to find you for 27 years to say thank you. My name is Sarah Mitchell. The night you stopped on PCH, I was minutes from dying. The doctors told me later that if you hadn't given me that glucose, I wouldn't have made it until the ambulance arrived. My son Michael would have watched me die in that car. But you stopped. You helped. You saved us both. I tried to contact you through the police report, but by the time I recovered, you were famous and unreachable. I wrote letters to your publicist that were never answered. I understand, you probably get thousands of letters. But I never stopped trying because you need to know what you did that night. Michael is 35 now. He's a paramedic in San Diego. He became a paramedic because of you. Because a stranger stopped to help when he was terrified and alone, and he wanted to be that person for other people. I'm writing this letter because I'm dying. Cancer. Stage 4. I don't have much time left. But before I go, I needed you to know, you didn't just save my life that night. You showed my son what kindness looks like. He's saved 43 people in his career so far. 43 lives that exist because you stopped on a highway 27 years ago. Thank you, Ben Affleck. Thank you for stopping. Sarah Mitchell. The studio was silent. Then someone in the audience started clapping. Then another. Then everyone was standing, applauding through tears, not for Ben Affleck the movie star but for Ben Affleck the human being who stopped on a highway when no one was watching. Jimmy folded the letter carefully and held it out to Ben. She wanted you to have this. Ben took it with trembling hands, stared at it for a long moment, then pressed it against his chest. 43 people, he whispered. Because I stopped. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. After the show, Ben framed Sarah Mitchell's letter. It hangs in his home office. When his kids ask about it, he tells them the whole story, about stopping, about Michael, about how one small choice echoes across decades. Michael Mitchell flew to Los Angeles 2 weeks later. He and Ben met for coffee. They talked for 4 hours. Michael brought photos of the 43 people he'd saved. Each one a life. Each one a ripple from that December night in 1997. Ben keeps those photos too. A reminder that sometimes the most important thing you'll ever do won't be in a movie,